Hello everyone and welcome on back to the channel. We have some very exciting news with the Battle for Lion's Arch update that is arriving next week. I wasn't expecting to get any news until tomorrow, considering usually on weekly bases, but we have some exciting information as well as screenshots from the finale of season 1. There also is a blog post which I will be going over, so let's get into it and digest everything that they have to share. So, Battle for Lion's Arch. Next Tuesday, November 8th, the final episode of Living World Season 1 returns permanently to Guild Wars 2. This is the final chapter of Season 1, completing the saga of the battle against Scarlet Briar. This content is a permanent addition to Guild Wars 2 and is free for all players. They then go into the strike mission. Now, this is the moment that I've been waiting for. I've been very hungry for strike mission content and just endgame situations to find myself in along with my friends. And there also is a screenshot of the bosses, and this is blowing me away. This is sending me over the moon because this is kind of what I would have liked if there ever was or could still be a Mordramoth commander strike mission with the 3 commanders. And the screenshot has 3 separate constructs that will be fighting, and they say this update brings with it a new strike mission, Old Lion's Court. Assemble a squad and take on the Watch Knight Triumvirate in the ruins of the Grand Piazza in Old Lion's Arch. You may enter this content from the Scrying Stone in Lion's Arch or the strike mission portal in Arborstone. It also comes with an image, and this just looks so good. We have a Watch Knight with a staff, one with a hammer, and one with a greatsword. Very in line, perhaps, with like Stave Master Adrian, Axe Master Harith, and of course, Diarmid. And this just is really cool. They don't go into any of the mechanics, but just from this alone, we can kind of speculate what the mechanics could be. Now, this normal mode could be where you fight each of the constructs individually, and then at a certain health threshold, they leave, you fight the next one, and you fight the next one, so on and so forth. And then perhaps at the finale of the fight, you fight them all at the same time. Or they could go whole hog and just have us fighting all 3 of them at once. This could perhaps create some very interesting tanking situations if they want to go down that road, because there are 3 enemies, and, you know, taunt is a condition in the game that is never given love. I think taunt could have a really cool place in Guild Wars 2 in its endgame systems if they so desire to play around with it in that way. But really cool visuals. There's some weapons. I wonder if we'll be able to collect these weapons or collect some of the helmets that they have. I think they have different helmets. Really interested to see the reward structure as well. But that's not all, and this came as a surprise to me, the public instance of the Battle for Lion's Arch. Now, I kind of called this. I thought that what they were doing with the Nightmare Tower could have been a precursor to what they would do for Battle for Lion's Arch, as the Nightmare Tower created a system where 50 players could get together and experience this grand moment, and I was like, they better do that for Lion's Arch. If not, it's a missed opportunity. And guess what? It seems that this is the direction they're going in. We're also adding the Battle for Lion's Arch itself as a repeatable instanced group encounter. Enter a publicly joinable instance with up to 50 players, or create a private squad to take down Scarlet's minions and repel her invasion of Lion's Arch. Story progression is not required to enter this instance. Speak to Lion Guard Peltnaw just outside the gates of Lion's Arch in Gandharan Fields to enter. The Battle for Lion's Arch and the Tower of Nightmares will also be added to the regular rotation of promoted events in the Eye of the North, joining Dragonstorm and the Twisted Marionette. I didn't read this before making this video, but I was going to touch on that, but that's awesome. More information about this content, including the full release notes, will be available on November 8th, and keep an eye on the newsfeed in the Guild Wars 2 launcher and on their official forums. I was just going to mention, I was like, we have Dragonstorm, we have the Twisted Marionette, we have now the Toxic Alliance, the Tower of Nightmares, and soon we will be getting the Battle for Lion's Arch. And this is a very interesting type of group content that Guild Wars 2 plays around with now. And it's one that it's very enjoyable, but I've always been worried that it will just fall out of people's favors because of the lack of systems to support it in-game. And I was worried that they weren't going to, but seeing now that they are adding it to the rotation of the Dragonstorm and the Twisted Marionette is really awesome. And I'm very hopeful that this won't just be a one blip thing, and perhaps people will be excited to play them whenever they pop up. Of course, it's also dependent on the achievements that are tied to it, the reward structures, if people find it to be a worthwhile endeavor for their time. And we know that Dragonstorm, people do that all the time because of the gold amount, because of the legendary crafting items that you need with Oreen, and I wonder if that will be implemented in any way to these events and any special currencies, perhaps research notes. Every time there's reward structure talks, it's like research notes are so sad. It's so hard to get them. But this is all super exciting. I'm really, really pumped about this. Now, I really want to move back to the strike missions just momentarily, because we have areas, and was going to tie into the, Eye of the North, Dragonstorm events, but that was covered. Now, I want to bring this back to the strike missions because I think it's kind of an interesting discussion about having a localized area for players to group up together in a space to go off and do PvE content, be it raids, strike missions, or fractals. And currently, we don't have a meeting place for PvE players per se. We have a couple, but they're all scattered about. And when we look at the other game modes of PvP, we have the mists where everyone goes and congregates. And in World vs. World, we kind of have that, but it's more so just you load into the maps and that's it. For PvE, we have the Aerodrome, which hasn't received any updates, but in my opinion, would serve as a great localized hub for players to get together and do strike missions, raids, and even fractals by putting a fractal portal in there, just to have an area for people to gather and for them to look at what is going on and say that, and see like, oh, the Call of the Mists for this raid is that one, and the Emboldened system is for that raid. Maybe I'll go and do that. And having a strike mission portal for people, or maybe like 2 strike mission portals to like separate Icebrood Saga and End of Dragons, and maybe even further, to see maybe the strike mission portals to be have a bit of cohesion to it, and even for fractals to have like a little small corner and area for people to group up for fractals. This might not be the main concern because people do know where to go, I hope, but it would be interesting just to see just to have like an area where you go to Aerodrome and like a portal scroll or an instanced tab, very similar to the PvP window where it's just like enter the mists and World vs. World, enter, Eternal Battlegrounds. We don't have a PvE tab currently, and I think some of these systems could be better supported and elaborated upon, but that is nothing to say that I am not excited. I am super excited to see Old Lion's Court, and having this screenshot, I was so confused as to what endgame boss this would be, because the most apparent one was, in my opinion, the holographic Scarlet. But I'm happy to see that they have moved away from that, as we did fight Scarlet Briar in a strike mission, and also people have already fought that fight in Season 1, and of course, they could always reutilize story mission bosses and story beats to create strike missions and just give them an update with new mechanics. I love seeing that, and I hope that if there ever are lulls or, moments where they find the time to perhaps even reinstate some expansion bosses. I think expansions in particular are the most deserving of perhaps strike missions. And I had mentioned like Heart of Thorns. I would love to see a fight where you fight all 3 of the Mordrim commanders, Adrian, Harith, and Diarmid, to give them a bit more of a moment. Perhaps Fowlin, and even Migraine Mode Mordremoth, and really update that fight. For Path of Fire, you could fight like the Herald of Balthazar, you could fight the War Beast, and then of course Balthazar himself. These are just areas of the game that are still played to this day and encountered and, engaged with, and having strike missions for those expansions could be kind of interesting in my opinion. I just love endgame content. I always want endgame content, a reason for us to group up, and engage with the game in various mechanics and in various ways, and I just love this, and I'm super excited to see this, and I'm so happy that the news launched today. But thank you all so very much for coming on by. Comment down below how you feel about the news of Old Lion's Court, and also the Battle for Lion's Arch returning in a way that hopefully, and in my opinion, will probably be the most satisfying way. I would love to hear all of your excitement and all of your thoughts down below. You can catch me over on Twitch streaming every day of the week. I'll be leveling today because it's a Monday. And if you would like to support the channel, head on over to the Patreon and get early access to many of my videos. And if you'd like to order Guild Wars 2's expansions or try it for free, you can utilize my links down below. Thank you all so very much. Share the game's excitement. I'm ready and pumped, but I'll see you all in the next video. Bye everyone. Mwah.